Welcome to the SAG-AFTRA Foundation's Conversations at Home program. I'm Michael Sládek from Plug Ugly Films and SAG-INDIE. Before we are joined by our guests today, I want to let you know that the SAG-AFTRA Foundation is a nonprofit organization that relies entirely on donations to provide emergency assistance and free educational programs to SAG-AFTRA artists. This conversation is made possible thanks to the generosity of our supporters. Over the past year, the foundation has given over $6.5 million in COVID relief to more than 7,000 performers. If you're a SAG-AFTRA artist and need help, please ask. And if you can help, please give. Information can be found in the description of this video. Thank you for your support. And now it's my pleasure to introduce director Nick Simon, along with actor-writer Luke Baines and actors Claire Holt, Katherine McNamara, and Timothy Granaderos of Untitled Horror Movie.
Hey,
welcome everyone.
Thank you for having us.
Oh, hello.
Thanks for doing this. So my first question for you guys is, where's Max? That's my audition for Untitled Horror Movie 2.
Probably with the shirt off somewhere.
Really, you fit right in.
He's probably
You actually had to pay him more money to put his shirt on. So
yes, good. All right, so now we know. So this whole thing will just be, we can feel free to have a field day on him for.
Yeah. If you're not here, then you're the butt of the joke, unfortunately.
Problem is, we can't roast Emmy for anything because she's so wonderful.
Right, well, that would just be wrong. Yeah. So I'm curious, where did this idea initially come from?
Simon,
you go first. You go first. It was your idea.
Look, I had an idea. I was hiking like every unemployed actor during the pandemic, and decided that I wanted to write a horror film. And reached out to Nick, who I'd worked with before on Golden Photographs, and just, I was like, look, I've got this idea for a horror movie about a haunted pendulum. And he was like, He wasn't really into the haunted pendulum idea. I could tell. But he was like, we could do something. And a couple of days later got back to me and he was like, what if we shot it right now? And that kind of changed the whole, narrative of the movie and how we did it. And that's kind of where the found footage style kind of came into play.
Oh, interesting. So you came up with the concept of the haunted pendulum first, and we're thinking of it as a full, like, normally shot feature.
Yeah, kind of like the movie that is in the movie. It was actually kind of how that whole thing that's sort of what it was. It was like, I got an idea for a haunted pendulum movie, and we started talking about it. And it was like, what if we shot it now? And it ends up being about people who are trying to make this movie, and there are conversations about that and how can we do this now, and is there a way we can figure out how to do it now? And this is right at the beginning of lockdown last year too.
Okay,
it's like March 2020. And I think, one of the things when the ideas started rolling, we live in a very self-tape world at the moment, and auditions themselves are always a weird, insane experience, but they're a little bit more insane, I think, at the moment, being at home, doing these insane scenes where you're getting thrown around the room, chasing invisible force. There are sometimes you get auditions that are 3 pages long with 0 dialogue. They're fun. And I thought, that's kind of funny. I wonder if we can, do something with that.
Well, I was wondering how much, for all the actors here, how much doing this film felt like acting in a normal movie versus self-taping for auditions.
It was insane how normal it felt, at least with the cast chemistry. We all, I think from the first table read, weren't sure how it was going to work out because so much of the movie is dependent upon that kind of banter. And somehow we were able to capture it because I think it's truly because the rest of the cast is so phenomenal. But it was a little bit daunting given the technical aspect of it. I've been on set, I've learned a lot from different crews, but there's a big difference between observing an expert who's been doing it for years and understanding while watching them versus actually trying your hand at it yourself. It's a very different experience.
So you're using what is supposed to be separate normally is you're doing everything at once, acting and shooting yourselves. Interesting. And so now Nick and Luke, you worked on a Wes Craven's movie, right? Together?
Yeah.
Was there much? Did you take anything from that brought you to this? I mean, you've worked on other films, obviously, in the past.
I think the whole meta horror idea was really kind of rooted in things that Wes had been doing before Scream. I mean, what he did with like Wes Craven's New Nightmare, it was so far ahead of its time. And I don't think this is sort of this is kind of like that in a weird way. It's about making a movie, you know. Mm-hmm. But we also, I think, have his sense of humor in this. And Wes was a really, really funny guy that a lot of people don't know that. But I think he would have loved this script, yeah.
And I mean, the first thing that popped into my head, I don't know if they were influences. I'm curious if they were. Obviously, Blair Witch, and then also American Movie. Were those influences for you guys, or just happy accidents?
Yeah, I mean, I think some anytime you do sort of a found footage thing, I think you're gonna root from Blair Witch. They kind of created the whole thing. Same thing with the movie, but I think some of the influences we had also were like, what does Scream look like in 2020? How do we do something that has that kind of meta horror vibe to it? Focusing, and I think we're always trying to focus more on like the comedy. And having the scary parts be, there, but we didn't know what we were even going to be able to pull off. I think another influence of mine, I think I told you about this, Luke, after the fact, was Community, the TV show.
Yeah.
Because there's so many scenes that they'd do so many episodes where it was just like 6 people sitting at a table and talking to each other, and it was funny and it was really clever, and the way they pulled it off was really smart. And just getting, I mean, again, I can't believe we got the cast we got in this movie. I mean, they all said yes, and we put them through so much, and they did everything. And the fact that some of them still haven't actually met each other in real life is really, really bonkers to me. But like, their chemistry was so perfect. You felt like they've known each other for a long time, Yeah,
it's a perfect segue to my next question, because I'm curious how you guys cast the film. How did you come to everybody one after another?
I thought about the most talented people I knew and reached out to them and begged them to do it.
Is that true, or did you go through the list and then got to us?
Yeah.
Nobody said no. Nobody said no. You guys were all the first people we talked to.
True.
That's absolutely the truth. I swear on my...
Yeah, that is absolutely the truth. But it's funny that you talk about like the Blair Witch. Like, I grew up watching the Blair Witch was one of the first movies that I stole my dad's handy cam and went out in like the local woods with my friend to recreate, because I thought it was just so cool. And so when we started shooting this, we were working with our DP, Kevin Duggan, and Kevin and I had kept going back and forth, shooting different test footage in my house. And I would send, he was in Missouri, so I would send it to him. And, the stuff that was like the movie part looked like it was shot on an iPhone. And so we were like, okay, this is not going to fly. We need to like add some more life into it. So that's kind of where that found footage aspect. But we were also like, I mean, at least I was very heavily influenced by movies like Teaching Mrs. Tingle and, like the Craft. Oh, I mean, very heavily influenced by The Craft. Oh, yeah. Those 90s movies that were the reason I wanted to act in the first place.
Interesting. Cool. And where was everyone during production? Where were all you guys?
The majority were in Los Angeles. Claire was in Miami. So I'm going to let Claire tell you about where she was.
I was in Miami. I was the only one on the East Coast, and we shot the majority of the film at night, obviously, because we didn't have a budget to 10 towel houses. And I also had a toddler, and I was 6 months pregnant. So it was a little wild shooting all night. But it was so brief. It was 8 days or something, I think, that we shot it in.
Yeah.
That's it? 8 days, the whole thing?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What?
Including reshoots. That was it.
How many pages do we do a day?
At one point, yeah, we did 20.
But essentially, we have 6 cameras shooting at once, and that allowed us so much freedom to not only play within the scenes, but to get so much more done.
It's a lot of words to learn, though, isn't it? 20 pages. Somehow, I don't know. We like taped things.
I saw Kat with her little setup with her sides taped next to her computer. I was like, dang, you're smart.
Well, it's Chrissy. I can be looking vacantly off into the distance.
You're professional, Kat.
Wow, that's really interesting. And so I guess was most of the film dialogue driven, or was there a lot of improv?
But I mean, it was probably 50-50. I mean, there was improv for sure. Everything was written. I mean, the scenes are all written. I mean, you guys own those characters though. And I always tell the actors, become these characters. If you can think of things that are funny or better than what's on the page, then let's absolutely use it. So they were, I mean, you guys brought a lot of your own stuff to the table too, which is why I think it's so great, you know?
I don't think they're giving themselves enough credit. They wrote a very funny script and really needed to make up stuff because it was just all there on the page, and you know, the chemistry was there already before we even said the words, you know, so they were really able to capture an interesting and compelling story in, you know, 6 little boxes or however many it was. So we didn't do much of it. It was a lot of them.
Well, that's I'm going to throw it back to the actors again, though, because that's kind of their fault, because they all said, and correct me if I'm wrong, Luke, but they all said, yeah, they're all interested, but they all want to read a script, because our plan was to really not write a script. And then everybody's like, yeah, I think Claire's going to do it, but she wants to see a script. Tim and Kat are in, but they really want to see a script. So we're like,
write a script.
so we ended up, that's why, I mean, the first script was like 40 pages long. It was like an outline or a treatment, you know, like we'll just do this and this. And then I had my wife read it and she was like, this sucks. And then we were like, we had to rewrite it. And then you guys all said yes, and everything worked out great.
It was really cool to write for people that we knew were already, you know, interested in and wanting to do it. Because, you know, like one of the best jokes in the film, in my opinion, is Tim's mustache. And that grew out of the fact that Tim had a mustache during lockdown and, you know, didn't want to shave it off. Very difficult, you know, just demands. Tim's the opposite of that.
You should see his rider. That was a hard one.
It had one note on it.
All day long.
My lip is cold right now.
But you know, it was cool to be able to write around things like that.
So, well, I want to know which of these actors are closest to their character. Feel free to mention the one here.
I mean, I don't know.
Max and Darren, obviously.
Max and Darren.
Max and Darren, maybe. Tim, the joke in the movie is that Tim always plays this like, you know, jerk or a bad guy or this asshole in these characters he plays, but in real life, Tim is like the nicest human being alive. So like when we started writing, knowing that Tim was going to play that part, like we started writing him as the nicest guy. He drinks milk, like he said, there's nothing, you know, like he's just a great guy.
Oh, thank you.
So I would say my vote would be for Tim.
Part of the beauty also of having people you know so well, like I've known Nick and Luke for years, write a character for you to do, is that they know what we've all had an opportunity to do and what we've not had an opportunity to do. So, you know, I don't get to do comedy very often, and Claire is the nicest human alive. And so, you know, it's all these things that we get a chance to explore, these other kind of characters that people don't often put us in. And it was a real ball.
Well, so what would you say for each of you or any of you, which were your hardest scenes to shoot?
I can start with this one. I think the FaceTime, where it was just me, myself, and the other actor, Luke and I had a scene together where it was just basically the technical side of things, because you're recording on your phone, but you're supposed to be looking at this other person who's not there, but you're looking at yourself because you're recording yourself, and you have an earbud in your ear. So you're listening to them, but you're looking at yourself, trying to react to them. So I think technically it was just very difficult. And
I had no problem with that because I always look at myself in a FaceTime call.
I didn't want to say it. I wasn't going to say it. But those are your strongest scenes, Claire.
So they cast correctly. Wow, that's great. And so, and in terms of directing scenes like these, what was the process? How did you influence their performances as it was happening?
It was weird. I mean, it was. You know, I had it. I was very lucky in the sense where I have such an incredible cast that I just said go and they would go, and it was like they were performing this thing for me. So that's kind of what it felt like a lot of the time. My notes were usually pretty minimal. I had basically little index cards with this around my desk, and I would write, each character's name, and I'd write down things as I was, because we do full scenes. So in some of those scenes would go 8-9 minutes long. And I would just write down notes for this thing. And I'd try not to give more than one note or two notes at a time, because there's such long, big scenes to kind of take on. And then it was really kind of unnerving also, just because usually when I do give notes to actors, I'll pull them aside, or it's just one-on-one. I never do it in front of all of the other actors, in front of the entire crew. Sometimes the composers in there watching. Like, it's like everybody who worked in this movie was always on the Zoom. So it was a little unnerving. If I get in my own head a little bit sometimes, if I thought about how many people were listening to the goofy note I was going to give, and who knows if that's going to work. So I had a teacher when I was at the American Film Institute that said, every time you open your mouth, you're fucking something up. So I tried to not talk, and the notes were always trying to be very specific and very simple, like real one note. And I'd also take notes, because these guys are so good, they would make their own adjustments from take to take. So then once that would happen, I would just cross out a secondary note. I would just have to keep track of everything that was happening. And we ended up doing 4 or 5 takes, maybe?
Well, maybe.
On each scene?
I think that was part of what was maybe the most difficult or the most unnerving thing for me as well, is, there a lot of the cinematography side of things fell to us to make sort of the final last minute adjustment calls on. Obviously, Kevin and Nick were amazing and taught us everything we know. And our DOP is somehow so skilled at looking at spaces that he's never been in through a web camera and going, oh, that lamp that was in your bedroom? Why don't you bring it out here, flip it upside down, and put a t-shirt over it in the corner, and that'll create, and somehow it's perfect. And so they were just savants in that nature. But when it comes to, the first scene I ever shot was a shot of Luke through a glass door at my house, where I had to pull up a blind and somehow find his face for a close-up simultaneously. And I'm going, I've never camera operated before in my life. I've seen how difficult it is, and I'm also operating a very sticky blind. So we'll see how this works, and I hope I don't ruin the movie.
So what were you guys all shooting with, actually, at any given moment?
iPhones. So yeah, the entire film was shot on iPhones. There's this incredible app that's name escapes me right now. And it allows you a lot of the control that you would get over a regular camera. You can change the temperature, you can change other things on it. It's like, I don't know.
We're getting a lot away from that part of it.
Yeah. But you can adjust the focus and play around with it and things like that. And so we use that because it was going to be the easiest way that the actors could do it for themselves. We went through so many different rounds of testing, also with the sound. The sound was something that we were, even up until the night before, petrified wasn't going to work, because that's a whole department on a film, and we were having the cast do the lighting and the filming and the sound and act. So yeah, the hardest thing for me, I would say, was the first day of shooting, which was over at Kat's house. And, the scene where I'm kind of running around talking to everybody on FaceTime, nobody was there. I had just an earpiece with somebody reading, our script supervisor reading the lines to me. And, we were in the middle of the pandemic, so it was a lockdown. I was running around Kat's apartment building, yelling about someone dying. Was very ready to be arrested or shot. So there's that.
It's okay, because the next night I was running around my house screaming, I can't get out, let me out, and banging on all the windows and doors. So, by then it was normal.
And what, nobody came to help you? What's going on? What's up? What's up? Well, they're just used to that from you, probably.
I mean, I do enough self-tapes.
I was going to say, it's probably like, oh, another actor, self-taping. I love the focus on, especially the beginning of the actors acting and trying to make something of bad dialogue. It's such a fun thing to play with. And it must have been a blast for you guys to do it. Although then again, maybe it was like triggering for some of you. How did those scenes were all completely written, or was it? It was yeah, right. Okay, cool.
I mean, there were certain little bits, I think, that, each of us had found fun ways to play within our characters at a certain point. I think, Darren and Leslie Kahn had a great time finding stuff. And Emmy was, finding little, and Claire, everybody found little quirks within our own character. My hair got caught in my lip gloss at one point, and they left it in, even though it was technically an outtake. And so that was kind of a fun aspect, but we did have a complete through line for each of us.
Uh-huh. And how did you guys, what was there a process for figuring out what, how you're reacting, or what the demon itself is doing to you, or are you just kind of throwing yourselves around, whatever worked? Or was there how did each of you decide how this was going to work for your character?
We actually, I was lucky enough to rope in somebody that Kat and I had worked with on the TV series Shadowhunters. Her name is Shara Kim, and she was basically acted as a stunt coordinator from afar. Her and another stunt performer actually pre-taped and broke down as tutorials what it would look like to get hit by the ghost, how you would fall safely, and to try and create like an overall theme of what that would look like. Obviously, it was a little bit harder with Claire. I was like, she was 6 months pregnant. I was like, you are not falling anywhere. Like
it was very gentle.
Yeah, Claire's fall, we moved the camera at the same time that you felt. That kind of helped. But then also our editor Don Money was incredible at just editing it in a way that made it look like we weren't just on Zoom pulling ourselves off camera, and I think he took a couple of frames out.
It was like an old school, old technique of just removing frames and just making it look more violent than it was, and faster.
Yeah, talk a bit about post-production. How was the editing process? Did you guys do any ADR? Was it?
Oh, it was the cleanest audio I've done in any movie I've ever worked on. Honestly, I had a 30 minutes of ADR. Luke, you were the only one, right? They came in.
It was like 8 lines of ADR.
It was like 8 lines. It was only because you were driving and we couldn't hear the mic. It was the sound from the car. That was the only one that didn't work. Everybody else's audio was perfectly clean. It's such it's a miracle that everything worked out as well. I mean, these guys they did everything. I keep on saying that. Like I sound like I'm on repeat, but like I didn't know what the footage looked like until the next day. Until the footage was uploaded, because I couldn't see what they were actually shooting. So it was a very old school way of making a movie, in a sense, where I'm just talking to the actors, I'm seeing them on the Zoom, but there was no monitor, there was nothing was wired in, so I wouldn't even know what the footage looked like until the next day.
And so about the audio, was it just the iPhone audio, or did you guys do a setup?
No, we had a microphone, and we got a boom mic and a separate card. You can set a roll, a separate source, and
Yeah, that was one of the biggest challenges when we were doing all of our testing, was because we wanted to give the actors the freedom to improv and cut one another off and things like that. It would have never worked with the audio the way it was, because as you're recording, you would have picked up Claire's voice or Tim's voice, and so we couldn't have had clean cuts. So that's why everybody had earpieces in, so that it was being recorded just what was in the room, and it was also on a completely separate audio track.
Makes sense. That makes sense. So any acting lessons learned during this, or directing lessons for that matter?
As someone who wants to direct, it was actually really wonderful to have a chance to try my hand at so many different aspects of filmmaking, even in a very small experimental way that, I was very much coached through, thanks to the amazing crew here. But, it's something that now, once you try your hand at it and you have a little bit of experience, you can kind of go, okay, now I understand at least this much more. I know I have a lot more to learn, but there's a little bit of understanding. It makes you excited.
Cool. And you guys are all now Zoom experts, so maybe you learn more about being on Zoom than the rest of us.
Only a Zoom expert. I'm kind of excited to do another movie in the next thing I do in person. I'm probably going to sit next to the camera a lot more, because I really did enjoy feeling like it was I've read stories from people who do that, don't watch monitors and actually just watch those scenes, because it is definitely a different feeling to sit there and be there with them, and be in those moments, because we were all in the same Zooms, we just sit there with each other. I think I really enjoyed that part of it.
So, and in terms of distributing the movie, did it resonate as quickly as the movie within the movie resonated with Lionsgate, or did you sell it before it was even order written?
No,
we didn't. It's out there. It came out, and we got distribution with a great company and a great partner out of the UK, Phil Hunt, and our producers Bronwyn, Cornelius, and hooked that all up. And it's been a very unique process getting that out. Also, it's everything. Nothing about this movie has been normal. We shot it weird. We edited it. We had to edit all through Zoom. Nobody ever met in person. We did a digital premiere in June, like a live stream event, and then it went to iTunes. It's everywhere now. Everywhere. Yeah.
All right, cool. And what's everybody working on now or next? Anyone?
What are you working on? Are you shooting anything?
Yeah, Tim.
Oh, I mean, me. I'm shooting a cool little indie movie right now. We actually just had our first day yesterday. Wrapped pretty late last night, so I had to put a little makeup on underneath the eyes. But yeah, no, it's.
All right, Darren.
No.
The only way you look better is if the mustache came back. That's the only.
We're gonna need another little break here before I do that.
You can pencil it in next time.
There you go.
Yeah, Nick and I are working on not a sequel, but definitely a follow-up to this, I guess, if you would kind of call it, or an extension of this horror comedy concept. And at some point we'll try and
talk everybody into it.
Get these people in it again.
Well, we talked about doing a sequel, and then we talked about doing what if we just keep this group together, because it was really fun. When do we do we could do like a Chris Guest thing. He's got the same people in all those movies. So let's try a different thing, and see if we come up with another idea. So
you just winnow it down to a podcast. Just keep getting less and less.
Yeah, right.
I mean, I volunteer as tribute. I'm very excited. I'm going back up to shoot on The Flash. For their final season, they're doing a crossover, and they got to have somebody to shoot arrows. So I guess I'm it.
I'm working on potty training right now, so I'm totally available for whatever Nick and Luke do.
Anyone else? Oh, that's everybody. All right, good. Well, thanks, guys. This has been a lot of fun chatting with you guys. It's such a fun film. Congratulations on it.
Thank you.
And I'm sure everybody who's watching will hopefully see it before they watch this, but I have no idea.
I also have to give a quick shout out to SAG-Indie, who and Darian Gibson there, who was one of the reasons that this film happened. I believe we were the first production to get approval after the shutdown, and that was entirely because of her. She was incredible, and I don't think the movie would have gotten made had she not been involved.
That's good to hear. We try to help. I'm glad you guys got it done. On behalf of SAG-AFTRA Foundation, I want to thank you for sharing your experiences, process, and craft with your fellow performers. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Take care.